Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about Angularjs Directives. We have used two directives so far, ng-app and ng-controller. Now let's take a look at what are Angular directives. So Angularjs directives are used to extend HTML. These are special attributes starting with ng prefix. So here we see that we are starting this app attribute with the prefix of ng-. That means it's an AngularJS attribute. Now we can call it directive as well. So we have two directives. In this video, we're going to talk about ng-app, ng-init, and ng-model directive. So what is the ng-app directive? ng-app directive starts an AngularJS application. It defines the root element. It automatically initializes or bootstraps the application when web page containing AngularJS application is loaded. It is also used to load various AngularJS modules. In AngularJS application, we have a concept of module, and in the last video, we created this my app module. Now, here we can see that we are accessing that module for rest of our index.html page. So if we define this ng-app for a div, that means that module will only be available inside that div. So here we're just saying that we are going to access this module for rest of our application. Now, before we talk about the next directive, I want to take you guys to Angularjs Documentation, and then we can see what are the other directives available in AngularJS. So this is the website of AngularJS. This is an official website, and here we want to go to API reference. So we go to develop, and then we click on API reference. Inside API reference, we see we have a section for directives. So we have all of these directives available. We used ng-app directive, so I'm going to click on that. On this page, we can read this passage here. So it says, use this directive to auto bootstrap an AngularJS application. The ng-app directive designates the root element of an application and is typically placed near the root element of the page, a body tag or an HTML tag. So that's what we did here. We just used this ng-app directive in HTML tag. Now anything goes in this module we can access within this index.html page. Let's go back to API reference, and here we see we have a bunch of directives as well. Well, if I'm gonna go cover all of these directives, that this course is going to be about 50 hours long. So I would highly recommend go through and read about these directives and read about how to use them. Next directive we're going to talk about is ng-init. So ng-init directive initializes an AngularJS application data. It is used to put the values to the variable to be used in the application. Now let's take a look at an example. We go back to a page, and here I'm just going to write a p tag here. So let's just say we go p, and then here we will use an attribute of ng-init. Okay, and then inside ng-init, I'm just going to use abc is equal to 4. I'll set that there. We need to put that inside abc is equal to 4 in a double quotation. Now here, if I go and then use ABC in binary expression, and we'll look at our page now, and I'm going to refresh the page, and we can see it says 4. Basically what's happening is we add variables to a scope object and we access them inside our page or our application. Actually, we need to have them inside of a controller, right? But if we want to actually add something to a scope object and we don't want to have this line or proper variable initialized in a scope object, you can use this ng-init, and now the ABC can be used in our page. The next directive we're going to talk about is ng-model directive, and this is the most used and most important directive in AngularJS. The directive binds the value of AngularJS application data to HTML input controls. So let's take a look at an example as well. I'm just going to create an input field. I'm going to say type, we'll just say text, and we use ng-model. And here we'll use this message. Okay, so where this message coming from? It's coming from our controller. We have this message scope object. Inside that we have a value of hello world. Now you go back, and then in there we are going to say, let's just say placeholder will be message. Right, I'm gonna save this file, and let's go back and take a look at the file. I'm gonna refresh the page, and now inside our input field we already have hello world. So basically what it's doing is it's binding that input field to our scope object, which has the value of hello world. Now if I go and change the value of hello world here, so that means I'm changing the value of message as well. So here let's just say we will go in binding expression. We'll just access the message here. As I told you guys before, that we can access our scope object with using this binding expression. Now if I save this, and I'll just go and refresh the page. One more thing we can do here, we are accessing Bootstrap, so I'm just gonna add a div and then class container, and then we'll make it a bit prettier. So we'll just take it up, and then here I'm gonna use the class as well. So we'll just say class form control. Okay, it's gonna make it a bit prettier. And here we can just say, let's just say h1, and we just close this. Now if I go back to our page, and I'm gonna refresh the page, and now we have hello world, and the value of message on the scope object is hello world. So let's say if I change the value in the input field, so if I say SB, as you can see it's changing the value of our scope object as well, which is kind of cool. It binds the value to that variable, scope variable, in our controller, so we can change the value of that from our input field. How cool is that? This is the most used and most important directive in AngularJS application development. Now we have other directives as well, so I'll just quickly show you a few things. We're gonna be talking about this ng-include, ng-if, ng-hide, ng-form, ng-cut, and few of other directives. But we can have a look at one more directive here, which is going to help us bind something to our scope object. So there is a directive called ng-bind. Now I'm going to read the passage here. So the ng-bind attribute tells AngularJS to replace the text of the content of the specified element of HTML with the value of a given expression. We can look at an example as well. So here we have this. Basically it works same as ng-model. So we have a scope object here, we have a controller, and then we have an input field, and we have ng-model set to name. Okay, and then we have this down there, which is gonna bind that to our scope object. Let's take a look at an example. So I'm just gonna delete this, and I'm going to, oops, we need to close the div element, so that would not cause a problem. All right, so if I just go, let's just say h1 and ng-bind, and then here we'll type the name of the variable, which is message, right? And then that's about it. Now we're gonna go and take a look at our application. I'm gonna refresh the page, and there you go. It's still working the same way as ng-model. So if I change the value, it's gonna change the value of the ng-model as well.